In this video, we are going to learn how to manage data, and we are going to be using limiting data feature that appears when we create tables. It would allow us to sort and limit data and work with the data that we are interested in, and they might represent the characteristics that we're interested to look at. So we'll first create this table. We have it on the side here. I'm going to um, create a similar table on the right hand side, customer ID, so that we know how we can create this table, and province and sales. So we notice right away that we don't have a perfect fit. We'll go to the top, select the column heads, and make a double left click so they can get a perfect fit. You may want to widen the width of some of these columns if you would like to do so. You can select these, make them center, bold, and customer ID. We can have 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10. Province, we have Ontario, Nova Scotia, Alberta, Nova Scotia again, Ontario, Nova Scotia, Alberta, Ontario, Alberta, and Nova Scotia. I've selected a range, like different provinces, because as you're talking, we are going to be limiting data and working with the data that we're interested in. For sales, I'm going to put 100, 200 and select them and drag them down. So that will give you all the data in terms of $100 all the way to 1,000. We also need to remember to change the formatting of the numbers to currency. We would not want to have decimal places, but if you wish, you may have them. Now I will also increase the font size. So that would be 14. Widen the width a little bit so that the data feel more comfortable. Okay, so now we see we have the data, and it is not a table though. So as you remember, the key combination for creating a table was Control L. So I just pressed Control, held on in it, and clicked on L. That key combination is to create a table. So now you see that it recognizes the table and it's asking if it has headers or not. Yes, it does. So that box is checked, and we're going to press OK. So what we have here is basically the same table that we had on the left-hand side. Now we see that these are not um, um, perfectly fit, these two terms, which is customer ID. We can make a double left click at the top between K and L column heads, and we'll get a perfect fit for customer ID as well. So as you notice, one of the things that happens when you create a table is this drop-down box that is automatically added when you create a table. So if you come to Data tab, so if you just make a click anywhere on the table, and then we were on Home tab, if you come to Data tab, you're going to see that one of the options in the ribbon is actually gray color. And we know that that means that item is active, that feature is active. In this case, that's filter. So basically, it's when we say we want to limit data, we are filtering data to work with data that we're interested in. And they are going to be meeting a certain criteria. In other words, you're also creating a smaller table out of the bigger table that you might have. Imagine, for example, these are your franchise businesses. in different provinces. Maybe you have hundreds of franchise outlets in Ontario, maybe you have 50 of them in Nova Scotia, and different numbers in different provinces. And it could be a table with, for example, 1,000 rows, meaning that there are in total 1,000 franchise businesses, and they're spread across Canada, meaning they're coming from different provinces, and there's no, organized way of putting them together in a sense that they're just scattered, just like what we have here. We have Ontario, we have Nova Scotia, we have Alberta, we have Nova Scotia again, then we have Ontario. Imagine you continue this table and you have a table with 1,000 rows. Right now you've got 10 rows, basically 10 entries. Imagine you had 1,000 entries and there's no certain pattern, but you're just interested in Ontario, or you're just interested in Nova Scotia, or you're just interested in Alberta, or you're interested in both Ontario and Alberta, or you're interested in Ontario, Nova Scotia, and Alberta, out of all the provinces. So you can be interested in a selected number of provinces, and it could be sales that you want to look at, it could be the cost that you want to look at, but at the end of the day, you're not interested in the whole data that you have in a bigger table. You have been provided with a bigger table, but you would like to look at a percentage of that table or just a part of that table with the data that represents what you're interested in. So this drop down boxes here will allow you to filter data based on the criteria that you're interested in. Now, you would not have that if you just put or assign borders. For example, I just type 5 numbers. When you create, this is one of the differences between border lines or creating borders and tables. So when you add borders to data, it literally just adds borders so that the data kind of looks different, or you know where the data is, because it's not just these gray borders that comes with a typical Excel worksheet. It's now more bold, that you see where the data is. That's kind of one of the uses of adding borders to your data. But when you turn it into a table, which is through Control L combination, you also get these um, drop down boxes that they automatically appear when you create a table. So for example, let's say you're interested in sales that are from Ontario. So you will come to the province column. From the drop down box, if you make a left click on it, you're going to see that Excel recognizes unique provinces. So if you take a look here, you've got 10 entries. But how many unique provinces we have in this list? We have Ontario, Nova Scotia, Alberta, and that's it. You have got 10 entries, but they're the repetition province-wise of already existing provinces. So you have Ontario up there, you have it here, you have it here. So how many unique provinces you have here? You've got 3. Ontario, Nova Scotia, and Alberta, right? So when you go to this drop-down box, Excel is going to recognize the unique entities. In this case, as we are in the province column, that's going to be the unique provinces. Now the question is, what is it that you're interested in looking at? So if you're interested in Alberta, first you will unselect, select all. So the first row here says select all. First, you will unselect select all, which is by left clicking on select all. We just did. So that will unselect all. Now you can select the ones that you're interested in. It's a powerful tool to filter data in a big table and will allow you to work with the data that you're interested in. So for example, say we are interested in Nova Scotia, I'll just make a left click on Nova Scotia. And now I'm going to press OK. So now it's going to give you the information which is only Nova Scotia. It's a very powerful tool that will allow you to customize the table and look at the information that you're interested in looking at. As I've mentioned, there are different ways that Excel allows you to work with data or look at the data that you're interested in. And this is another way that accomplishes the same task. For example, with conditional formatting, you can change the color of the data that meets a certain criteria to the color that you want. But if you have a table with 1,000 rows, and if there is a data at the bottom of that table that meets that criteria, in order to see that data, you actually need to scroll down to see that data because it's at the bottom. So yes, the data stands out from the crowd, but if it is somewhere down there, the change, the color of the data is going to change if it meets the criteria, but you need to scroll down to actually see it. But this way, you're basically trimming a table by filtering it, by limiting it. You get a trim table. And as I've said before, there are other ways that we are also going to learn how we can trim a table or how we can customize a table, but not formatting wise, in terms of data wise, that what data we're interested to see and how we can bring it up. So this is another way of working and looking at the data that we're interested in. Again, we're applying it to a table which has 10 rows. This could be 1,000 rows. This could be 100,000 rows. As soon as you just click on Nova Scotia, that will actually give you the data that you're interested in. And in this case, we have got 3 columns, which is customer ID, province, and sales. There could be like hundreds of columns here. It could be customer ID, customer name, what their address is, for example, we can assign different status to our franchise business in terms of their sales. For example, in Tim Hortons' case, they were going with bronze, silver, and metal. It was actually one of the proposals that they were considering. For example, the restaurants that they have a lot of sales, their status becomes gold for Tim Hortons Corporation. So when they're dealing with them, they might give them better offers, or maybe the Tim Hortons restaurants with uh, you know, uh, gold status, they may receive more frequent shipments. And by the way, just to be clear, this is just an example. I'm not saying that's what Tim Hortons is doing. I'm just using it as an example. I'm saying, imagine that's what Tim Hortons, was looking at. So if you've got that kind of data, which is a franchise business, and they have, like, say, this kind of status, then by limiting their data to gold status, then they can see, for example, how many Tim Hortons restaurants have the gold status, how many of them have silver status, how many are bronze, how it has actually changed trend wise, how many, for example, restaurants have stepped up to, silver from bronze or from silver to gold, so forth. So you can have a very big table with a lot of information in it, and you can limit the data to exactly what you want to see. So in this case, we did Nova Scotia. Now on the right hand side, you also see sales. So you see that customer ID 2 is actually in Nova Scotia, and the sales is 200. Then you move to number 4, and then 6, and then 10, and they're all from Nova Scotia. Now, as we have filtered the data, you will also notice that the filter sign will actually appear here as well. So see, like customer ID and sales, they have a drop down box, but there's no filter sign attached to it. But we see that there's a filter sign attached here. That will also show you that this is where you have filtered data. Because again, you can have a lot of columns, you can forget what was the column that you had applied the filtering so that you have ended up with a smaller table. Reason that you need to remember that is because you might want to retrieve the original table. So to retrieve the original table, you have to make a left click here, and then you will click on, and that's a left click, on select all. So now select all, and now press OK, retrieve the whole column again. So that's how you can know through which column you limited the data, because that's the same column that you have to go to if you would like to unlimit data. Now, let's say you're interested in seeing Alberta only. So you'll click on Alberta. Let's say you only want to see Ontario. So I'm clicking on Ontario. So now you'll see Ontario. Let's see you are interested in a combination of Ontario and Alberta. And now you will see both Ontario and Alberta. So whatever option that you're interested in, that's what you can apply here. And if you would like to retrieve the whole table, you'll click on select all, press OK, and you get the whole table. So with that, we also covered this PowerPoint slides, which is on click on the drop down box and we can see the information. Sort largest to smallest. So we work basically with the second column. We can also work with the first column, and that's like customer ID. So if you make a left click here, there are two options, which is sort smallest to largest and sort largest to smallest. So if you go with sort largest to smallest, now you see that the data in the first column changes. It used to be from 1 to 10, now it is 10 to 1 from largest to smallest. What is important to remember is that it is not just the information in the first column that is changing. The corresponding information is also changing in the other columns. Meaning, if I change that back to smallest to largest, just have this in mind as an example. Customer ID 1 belongs to Ontario and the sales price is 100,000, right? Customer number 10 is Nova Scotia and the sales price is 1,000. Now, when we change this, and we are just remembering these two as examples, when you're sorting it now from largest to smallest, customer ID 10 comes up, customer number 1 goes down. But with that goes Ontario to the bottom and $100 to the bottom. With that goes up Nova Scotia as well as 1,000. So basically, what you're changing here is not just number 1 or 2 or 3 in customer ID. You are making a change in a whole row. So it is the whole row and all the information inside that row that is moving up or down when you're sorting it. So when you sort now from, if you want to sort this now from smallest to largest, it's not just number 1 moving up and the rest of the information is staying where they are. It is number 1 Ontario and 100 that is going to go up, and again number 2 Nova Scotia 200, number 3 Alberta 300, number 4 Nova Scotia 400. That's the information that is going to move as a whole row. So that's important um, point to remember when you're sorting information from largest to smallest or smallest to largest. It's important to remember that the whole row is moving. It's not just the information in the first column. You can also apply this to sales column. Now, when you come here, you have, A to Z now, or Z to A, because it recognizes that you don't have numbers in the province column. What you actually have is text. So you can sort them alphabetically. But when you go to customer ID, it recognizes that you've got numbers. That's why it gives you options on smallest to largest or largest to smallest. Same thing will happen if you go to the sales. So if you go from largest to smallest, as you see, it is the same as changing the ordering in the first column, which was customer ID. When you do from largest to smallest or smallest to largest, you have to remember that it is the whole row whose position is changing after you change the sorting or the order. Now I'm going to just bring it back to smallest to largest. Another thing here on on before moving on to sales, for example, customer ID. Say you're interested in customer 3, 5, and 8 only. So you can just first unselect select all, and then you can select the customer IDs that you're interested in, and then press OK. It's going to give you customer 3, 5, and 8. Now you can look to see what province those customers are coming from, and these customers could be your franchise or outlets, for example, and what the sales are. So you can see here, for example, customer ID 3 belongs to province of Alberta, and the sales is 300. This could be 300 million, 300,000, or whatever that number might be. You're wondering where customer number 5 is coming from. Well, that's Ontario, and the sales is 500, and the same for customer ID 8, which is Ontario, and 800. Again, if you want to retrieve the whole column, you can come here, select all, because you see that there's a filter symbol here. That will tell you that's where you're filtered. Press OK, and then you retrieve the whole table. We can also move to sales column. Now, when you make a left click here, you see that it allows you to work with number filters. That is, if you would like to define some conditions. So before moving on to that, again, in the sales column, you can also unselect select all, and you can select the numbers that you're interested in. For example, you can say, I'm interested in 500 and $1,000. Let's see what provinces or what customer IDs belong to or correspond to this piece of information. That piece of information is the sales of 500. I want to know what province that sale information comes from and what is the customer ID associated with the total sale of 500. So you just limit that to the sales column. You can limit that to 500 and 1,000, and then you can look at the province column. You'll see 500 comes from Ontario, 1,000 comes from Nova Scotia, and the corresponding customer IDs are 5 and 10 respectively. Again, you would like to retrieve the whole table. Now you will see that the filter sign is on the sales column. So make a left click there, then make a left click on select all, then press OK, and now you have retrieved the whole table. Back to PowerPoint slides. So these are some snapshots of what basically we were doing there in terms of limiting data. We have done the example of Nova Scotia. We are limiting the data to Nova Scotia. You will click on the drop-down box in the province column, and you can select Nova Scotia, or you can use text filter. So if you go back here to see how text filter works, so if you make a left click here in the first column, you're going to see number filter. If you go to province column, you're going to see text filter. If you go to sales column, again, you're going to see number filter. So as just like how we discussed about sorting smallest to largest in columns that the values, that the content is numbers. And if you go to say provinces, you don't have numbers, you only have text. So that's why it gives you the option of sort alphabetically. So basically it's the same concept. Excel recognizes the content that you have in that column, whether or not it is data, whether it is text, and it offers you options accordingly. So when you go to like customer ID here, it recognizes you've got numbers. That's why it offers you the options of sorting from smallest to largest or largest to smallest or number filter. But when you go to province, it recognizes that the content is text, so it allows you to sort alphabetically or through text filter. So for example, if you're interested to see Nova Scotia, you can unselect select all and select Nova Scotia afterwards, or you can go to text filter and say, I am looking for information that equals Nova Scotia. So I'm just typing Nova Scotia and then press OK. It will give you Nova Scotia. Now remember that we selected equals. So you can come here and say, well, greater than or less than. Well, we are not working with really numbers here. So I'm just going to come back here, select all. So we have retrieved the whole column. As it's a text filter, we can say begins with, ends with, contains. For example, if we say contains N OV, so basically, it has to bring basically again Nova Scotia because it contains an OV in it. So press OK, you will get Nova Scotia. So again, you can have a big table here with a lot of information. And if you're looking for specific information, you can also use the text filter. If you're specific about a certain content, that's when you will go to, equals. But again, in this case, yes, we just went with like equals, say Alberta, and then press OK, you will get the perfect Alberta. Again, you can go back here, select all, press OK, and then you retrieve the whole column. Again, it's just another way of how you can filter or limit data. You can come here and select the province that you're interested in, or retrieve the whole table, and you can go to text filter and put, for example, Ontario. Two different ways that accomplish the same task, which is on what kind of information you would like to see. Again, select all, and then you retrieve the whole table. Number filters. For example, if you would like to know the sales that are more than 500, what's the corresponding or associated information with those sales in terms of province and customer ID that are greater than 500. So you would like to come here. Now, one way to do that, it would be, to select them manually. Like, so you have to select 600, 700, 800, 900, and 1000. Now you can imagine if you've got more information, like more data, you wouldn't want to do this. You wouldn't want to go through 600, 700 and click one at a time. But it's one way of doing it. If it's a smaller table, maybe you're only interested in, 700 and 1000. Then you can just select those two numbers and look to see, what's the corresponding information in terms of province and customer ID. Or you can go to the number filter, and you can select, for example, greater than. You can say if it's greater than 550, show me the information. So you will see that this is the information in terms of customer ID and province for the sales that are greater than 550. Or you can say less than. So you're interested in less than 670. Now press OK. Now here's all the information that is less than 670. That is 100 all the way to 600. This is the information on the province, and this is the information on customer ID. Again, to retrieve the full table, you can select all, press OK, and then you have the full table. You can also do custom filters. Remember, in the conditional formatting, like we didn't have top 20% in the list. So what if I want top 30%? What if I want top 35%? So you saw that we could go to the custom rules and then define the numbers that we're interested in, and that could be any number. So we have the same process here. So what if, for example, you're interested in the smallest and largest sale? So you want to know what branches are generating the least amount of revenue in your business. What are the franchise businesses that are creating the highest amount of revenue in your business? So you are interested in the lowest and the highest. That is when you can. So it's not about greater than or less than something. It's actually a combination of these two. So there's a benchmark for the lowest. You want to know who is doing below that. There's a benchmark for the highest sales, and you want to know who's doing more than that. So who is over accomplishing, who is under accomplishing, and you can easily do that with by using custom sorting, so or custom limiting. And that's going to happen in the sales column. So you make a left click here, you go to number filters. At the bottom, you have custom filter. Now, when you go to custom filter, basically this box pops up that we use for example, greater than. So we are going to say we're interested in information that is less than 150. So, and I'm choosing numbers according to the values we have in the table. So I'm going to take 100 as the lowest, obviously, and 1000 as the highest. So we are wondering, what's the lowest and what's the highest? Again, it's a small table. It becomes evident, uh, obvious, what it is. But imagine like this table has like 1,000 rows, and numbers are not perfectly arranged like this, from like a perfect 100 to 1,000. Numbers are scattered. Some of them are two-digit numbers like $95. Some of them are 100,000. They're just numbers all over the place, and they're scattered. And you're wondering what is the lowest number and what's the highest number. So you're going to say the number that is less than 150, and it is more than greater than 950. So what we expect here is to accomplish seeing the information for branches that have generated revenue that are less than 150 and more than 950. As we want both of them, that's why in the conversation we say and. We say I want this and I want that. I want item A and I want item B. So in the conversation we'll use and because we want both of them. We want to say I want this and I want that. See, we say and. Mathematically, though, it doesn't work that way, and that's very interesting. And we're going to see that shortly. So we are saying that we want the sales that are less than 150 and they're greater than 950. So let's press on OK. As you see, nothing appears. But what we were expecting to see was 100 and 1,000, right? The reason is that mathematically you cannot find a number that is simultaneously less than 150 and greater than 950. Such a number doesn't exist. So in the conversation, we say, I want this and I want that. But when it comes to mathematics, you have to say the number has to be less than 150 or more than 950. And that's how you can accomplish less than 150 and more than 950 in the conversation. So in a conversation, when you say I want less than 150 and more than 950, if you want to accomplish that in mathematics, you will choose or, because now it's going to give you the numbers that are less than 150 or they're more than 950. And that's basically what you want when you say I want less than 150 and more than 950. So I'm going to come here, select all. So I retrieve the table again. So we're going to go back here, number filters, and at the bottom we have custom filter. So we're going to say I want numbers that are less than 150 or greater than 950. Now mathematically this makes sense. A number is either less than 150 or 900 or greater than 950. So whatever those numbers are, it's going to actually now find for us. Press OK. There we have it. So now we have the branches or cells that are less than 150 and more than 950. And we're accomplishing that by choosing or when we want to select it in that box. So now we see the lowest sales is $100 and it comes from Ontario. It belongs to customer ID 1. The highest sale is 1,000. It comes from province of Nova Scotia and it belongs to customer ID 10. So that would be custom filter that basically you can accomplish the lowest and the highest. Again, to retrieve the whole table, we go to select all, press OK, and there we have the table. Finding sales which are less than 200 or greater than 900. Basically something similar that we just did. The other part about working with data is validation. So there are two ways that you can validate data in Excel, and we're going to go through both of them. There's no right or wrong when it comes to which one you should be doing. It's just that um, which one you prefer to go with. So one way is a pre-processing or pre-validation process. One is basically a correction process. So it's a after fact. One is before fact, one is after fact. We can also put it that way. So if we go with the before fact or pre-processing process, what happens is that, say you want to create a worksheet which includes data on your sales in your store in the last 1 week, but you don't want to make a mistake. One good thing about Excel is that it's very user friendly in a sense that it will take any value from you. All you have to do is just click on a cell and type, for example, 5,000, and it will take that from you. But what if you're actually making a mistake when you're entering that data? What if there's no such item in your store that is, more than even 500, let alone 5,000 as a price tag? So when you're creating information, when you're inputting numbers, Excel is friendly enough that will take any number from you, me, which could be a wrong number, which could be a mistake. So you want to prevent that from happening. And these things happen in the job environment more often than what you think. There are people in the stores whose job is to just collect data, collect information, and they have to input it into the system. Human error happens more often than what you might imagine. And that's one of the reasons that we have systems that are trying to lessen or lower or decrease human error. As long as it's not a robot doing it, maybe it would be difficult to minimize human error to zero. But human error is there. So one way of dealing with that, again, there are different ways of doing it. One way of dealing with that is to make sure that Excel can actually help you as you're entering information. So for example, maybe the most expensive item in your store is just $1,000. Like in this store, there's nothing which is more pricey than 1,000. That means that when you go to enter data, any number that you're potentially entering, which is greater than 1,000, that should be a mistake. And you would appreciate if Excel lets you know about that so that that number doesn't actually go in. So the first approach here is pre-fact or pre-processing, meaning that as you're entering data, you want Excel to let you know if you're making a mistake on the spot. So that's the first one that we are going to do. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger here. So let's say this is your sales here, sales column, and this is where you're supposed to enter data. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to uh, add borderline so that we know this is where you're going to be entering your information. So any number that goes beyond $1,000, you want Excel to let you know, or that that's a mistake, and in other words, not allow you to enter that number. So the first step is to select the range of cells in which you are going to be entering data, and you want Excel to watch. So this is basically the cells that we added borderline. So I'm going to select them. This is the range of cells in which we are going to enter values for cells. You go to Data tab, Data Validation, one left click. There's a drop-down box here, kind of looks like a drop-down box. Click on Data Validation. This box pops up. One important thing here to remember is that Excel allows you to determine what you want to allow to happen. And if that's not the case, that is what Excel is going to prevent from happening. In other words, in this box, you're not defining or specifying what is not allowed. Here, you're defining, identifying, or specifying what is allowed. And if that's not the case, you want Excel to let you know. So we are going to say allow any value, which, well, we have to select, for example, whole number, which is less than. So when you say less than, that means you should define a maximum, say $1,000. So we are saying allow numbers that are less than 1,000. That is what we are defining here. So that if we enter a number which is greater than 1,000, then Excel should give us a message that maybe there's a mistake going on here. And it will actually allow you to define how you would like to see that error message, or how you want that error message to appear. And that will be through the third tab, which is error alert. So if you make a left click on that, the title can be error. And the error message that you want to see is a wrong number is entered. Right? So that's the third tab. the title of the error message is going to be error, and error message is going to be a wrong number is entered. Now you press OK. Now we're going to start typing numbers. So for example, the first one is $200. Excel takes it. I'm going to type 500, press enter, it takes it. I'm going to type 750, press enter, it takes it. Now I'm going to type 1200. See, I've typed it, right? Now I'm going to press enter, but we are going to see that Excel is not going to take it. Well, that's what's supposed to happen. So let's see. There you go. So it does not take the number. It says, and this is what we had defined, a wrong number is entered. Now it says retry and say, oh, that was not 1020, that was just 120. So that 10 was basically extra. So now you go 120 and it actually takes it. So that goes all the way. If you put, for example, 10,000, it's going to say no. And you can click on retry and say, oh, I just meant, that was like 950. And now it takes it. So this is basically before fact. It doesn't allow you to put the numbers. Now there's another way of doing this, and that will be after fact. That would be that you have your data. So I'm going to add like borderline here. You have entered your data, you want Excel to check. So this is called corrective approach or after fact approach. And it's a matter of preference which one you want to go with. So let's say you would say, okay, I will first enter my data and then I want Excel to go through the data and find the numbers that don't make sense. Again, this could be like thousands of entries. Maybe you're entering sales for the whole month in a data sheet. You're inputting them. And again, human error is always there in most cases. It happens more often than what we might think. If there's no error, that's great. But if there is an error and you're wondering, I hope I didn't make a mistake in entering like thousands of, data points to this Excel sheet. Excel provides that peace of mind that all you have to do is basically what we are doing, and then Excel will correct it for you, or you can take the before fact approach so that mistakes wouldn't even happen. So with this one, which is after fact approach, let's say that we have entered the data. So we've got 100, 200, and I'm going to select them and drag it down. So this is all the data that we have. And say some of these numbers cannot potentially happen for whatever reason. For example, the cheapest item is 300. So this 200 and 100 are a mistake. And the most expensive is 1700. So basically this 1800 and 1900 are a mistake. I'm just giving an example. Basically, I want to create a scenario where you have numbers that they don't fit in at the bottom, and you have numbers that they don't fit in at the top. Now, that could be any scenario. So in this approach, you have entered the numbers, and it has taken from you. For example, you had meant to put 1,000, but you have put 100. Right? You have meant to put like 2,000, but you have put like 200, whatever that case might be. You have put numbers that they don't fit into the range that is actually feasible or is the real scenario or the real case. So you have entered your numbers. Now you want Excel to check. First, you'll select the data. You'll go to Data tab. You'll go to Data Validation. Click on Data Validation. Settings tab. We will say whole numbers that are between, again, we are allowing whole numbers that are between 250 as the minimum and 180.50. So what we are telling Excel is allow numbers that are between 250 and 1850. In other words, any number which is not in this range must be flagged. Now we'll press OK. Here's the important part. We will go back to data validation, one left click, Now we are going to make a left click on circle invalid data. And there we have it. So the 3 data points that they were not fitting into our range, they're actually flagged or circled. The 100 and 200, which is less than 250, and the 1900, which is greater than 1850 that we had defined. So again, in that box, we specify what we want to allow. We said allow from 250 to 1850, meaning whatever which is not in that range has to be flagged or circled. So as you see, you can, if you feel that this would be the way that you would like to go with, what would happen is that first you will put your information in, and then you can just do a check at the end. That would be an after fact correction or corrective approach. So here the first is the pre-processing, pre-fact approach. We select the cells to which we want to apply the data validation. We will go to Data tab. From Data Tools group, we will select Data Validation. We will go to Settings tab. We will click on Allow. We work with allowing whole numbers. And on Error Alert tab, we will enter the message that we would like to pop up when a wrong number is entered. The second approach was circling invalid data. So for spotting entered numbers that are wrong, we can use circle invalid data from the Data tab, Data Tools group, Data Validation dropdown. So first we'll enter the data, we will select it, we will go to the Data Validation Settings tab, we will specify what we want to be allowed. And after we do that, we come back, we just make a left click on circle invalid data in the data validation dropdown. And that way we can specify or flag down the data that was not inside the range that we had to specify.